Hi, Laura. Welcome to my first podcast show.
Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you, Laura.
Now can you hear me?
Yes, there we
Yeah, well,
go.
it
There
said
we
to use
go.
headphones, but apparently not.
Well, thank you
So sorry
so
about
much for
that.
coming on the show.
Good
Um,
morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm so excited. This is the first podcast show. So, always fun to have those technical issues right up front on your very first show. So,
I think I was in a
uh,
different backstage. I think I was in your Bible study backstage as opposed to your podcast.
yeah, I'm really taking 2021 by the horns and trying all kinds of stuff with this podcast tool.
That's
So yeah. Well, you're also welcome to join the Bible study if you want at a future
right. According to the comments, I was late. It was like
date.
9:50 at night.
Well, thank you again for coming. So, guests, I have Laura on today because she, one, is a Navy veteran, a Harley rider, and a photographer, which makes her one very cool, fantastic woman. But
Thank you.
really, I wanted her to talk about professional pictures today. So, my followers, Laura, just for a little bit of background, are typically job seekers, they're executives, they could be new to the workforce, so they run the gamut. As you know, I'm also a published author, so I have a lot of authors who follow me as well and constantly ask for advice. And one of the biggest questions I get, it happens to do with pictures. They want to know, do I need to get headshots? And, what is a professional headshot or professional pictures? And do I need more than just a headshot? Anyway, so I thought, who better to ask than the expert photographer?
Awesome.
So let's start, I guess, with what is a professional headshot?
All right. Well, I think it's actually very subjective. You can Google it, and it will tell you a definition. But I think it's really what is the picture that you want to show the world that conveys who you are or what you do. Right. So the professional headshot for my sanitation engineer may be a little bit different from the professional headshot of a Fortune 500 CEO. It just depends on what is it that you're trying to convey.
Okay.
So I say it that way because I don't want people to get locked into it has to be a white background. It has to be in a suit. No, it not necessarily. It depends on what you do and how are you going to use that picture.
Gotcha. And I'm glad you said that. And I'll ask more questions, obviously, but that was a question I had when I tried to get headshots. I have a diverse background. So I'm a business owner, I'm that entrepreneur, but then I'm the author and I'm also a coach. Do I wear the suit? Do I not wear the suit? Do I look approachable? All those good things. So let me go on and ask the next question, which is what type of headshot should a person have for LinkedIn? So let's talk the social media platform.
Yeah. And again, I think what I mentioned earlier applies to LinkedIn as well. What are you using LinkedIn for? And replace LinkedIn with, I don't use Twitter, so I don't think you even have pictures on Twitter, right?
No.
But Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, any of these platforms, what are you using it for? If you're using LinkedIn for the original use of LinkedIn, which was job seeking, and I'm here to tell you, I am a prolific. Is that a word? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Prolific LinkedIn user, but I'm not looking for a job. I'm using it obviously for branding my photography. So whatever it is you're using LinkedIn for, that picture should match that purpose. So if you're job searching, there are some amazing statistics out there about how many potential employees are using LinkedIn to find their next CEO, their next staff member. And so if you're trying to make a first impression with any of those future employers, then perhaps you want to have a picture that conveys whatever it is that you're applying for. So if you're applying for a corporate job, you probably should wear something that appeals to that audience. If you're trying to, I actually had a client come in and said, I don't want a job where I have to wear a tie. Can I, can I still have a professional picture that makes me look presentable? I'm like, yeah, it's called business casual. You know, it's a jacket with a shirt that you would wear with a tie, but you just remove the tie. And he goes, and that's my dream job, is that I don't ever have to wear a tie. I said, well, put out the image that you want to achieve, right? Put out the, wear how you want to look, because that's who you're going to attract.
Exactly. Perfect. That's what I tell my clients, thanks to you schooling me before we ever did this podcast. Also, before we move off the topic of LinkedIn, I always tell my clients, be careful of what's in the background of the picture. So can you talk a little bit about what shouldn't be in there, or what could be in there, what the focus should be with that picture?
Well, if you're going to a professional headshot photographer or a professional photographer in general, that's his or hers to determine and help you come up with whatever feel that you want. But yeah, if your professional photographer is taking a picture of you and there's a lot of clutter in the background, like you see in my office, then
me too.
Then that person might not necessarily be a professional. And actually, there are ways to, assuming they're using a professional camera, to actually focus in on you and pretty much make the background disappear. But really, what you want is to have a background that has no clutter, just plain and simple. But that doesn't mean that you can't get a picture, for example, that's outside. I do indoor and outdoor headshots, and when I take someone outdoors, I'm constantly scanning behind them to make sure that there isn't a light pole sticking out of their head, right? Or the greenery is gorgeous right against whatever they're wearing, but perhaps maybe, you know, one of the leaves is coming out of their ear. And some of these things I can fix in post-processing. I have, you know, most photographers use software to help retouch, and we can take, but really what we should be doing is paying attention to details. And that's the benefit of using professional photographers. They are paying attention to all the details that you probably don't even realize are important until you see the picture.
Gotcha. That's very important to say, because you're right. We're not the experts, so we don't know what we don't know. We don't know to look for those things you mentioned. We're so, I can speak for myself, nervous to begin with. So when I'm taking my picture, I'm so focused on me that I don't realize anything around me. And yes, I've been guilty of taking those pictures where I do look like I have something coming out of my head. So that's a good segue into the next question. Do I need to hire a professional photographer? Again, I've expressed that my followers are authors. Many of them are new authors. They're already spending tons of money on book covers and editing and formatting, and you know, it gets a little overwhelming. And then also LinkedIn, some people have lost their jobs, especially with what we're going, you know, dealing with right now. And is there a way, until they can afford that professional photographer, you know, can they do a DIY scenario? And if so, what would be a good option to go, you know, going that route? Can they use their iPhone? Can they use their, you know?
So Google is all of our friends. And when I was in the Navy, it was Chief Google. Chief Google can explain everything to you, right? You can Google and find out the best. There are some amazing articles out there that show you actually how to do it yourself. One of the things I would say, if you're going to do it yourself, you know, find a good article that explains it in detail. I've seen a few which talk about, you know, obviously the importance, the basics, right? The lighting, what you're wearing, in terms of avoiding distractions. And then I actually, I don't let anybody take my headshots. So all my headshots are mine. Okay. And one of the reasons why I take my own headshots is because I don't like being in front of the camera. And so I can get a very natural, relaxed look when I press my trigger, which is essentially when you're doing it yourself, if you're using your iPhone, you can put it on a timer, right? Just like you would on an expensive camera. obviously you have to have some type of stand that holds it, a tripod or a way to prop it so that it's pointing at you. But what I like about taking pictures of myself, mainly because I have the equipment, right? I have the great lighting and all, and the studio, but I can continue to take it and be relaxed. And I have no inhibitions. No one's watching me. And some of my best pictures are obviously the ones I've taken myself. And I'm not cheating on myself by asking another photographer to take my picture.
Right.
If you can't afford one and you're not comfortable doing it yourself, and you don't like the picture that your spouse or your partner or your friend made you look like a mugshot against the white wall, which there's plenty of those.
Right.
The best thing to do is find a way to exchange services. I do this a lot. People want quality imagery, but when they ask for a professional photographer, it's not usually cheap, right? Because time is money.
Right.
And for every hour that I'm giving you at an event or a headshot, I'm spending 2 and 3 more hours processing and making sure you have the best picture. So it is expensive, but you can find someone who's trying to build their portfolio, or someone who is willing to exchange services.
Yes.
Will you write my resume if I come and give you a headshot?
Right.
You can find those scenarios where people, want to exchange value for value. So it's not a non-starter. And maybe there's a student. Maybe you have a niece or a nephew that wants to be a photographer, and they're taking classes and they need you as a subject. So they're out there.
See, and that's why you are the expert and on this show, because I tell you what, we think very much alike, especially being, business owners, starting out, learning all this stuff. And I do trades all the time. My websites are created by a wonderful graphic designer, and there's times when we'll do trades. I'll do some content for her and she'll, do a couple more pages for me or something. So trade is awesome. And then bringing up the point about, the schools, there's a lot of students who are trying to learn the skill, and that could be another way to go. I am not one of those folks who can do it yourself. And my family is, although they're all good, I'm a poor subject because I get so nervous and so tense about looking a certain way and portraying some image I have in my mind that I blow the whole thing. I once had a photographer say she didn't have her clicker that day, and she would talk to me and we'd have these great conversations, and then all of a sudden, as soon as she got behind the camera, I froze. It was like, and she's like, I need to give you some wine or something because you need to loosen up. This is crazy. And that session ended up being 2 hours for the poor woman. And, which will bring me to another point later about a good fit, finding a person that's a good fit for you. But let me jump into the next thing. So you already mentioned a little bit about hiring, what are the benefits of hiring a professional photographer? So again, just excuse me. I'm getting used to this new technology. So, like you said, the lighting, the looking for things that a person normally doesn't look for. And then again, just the comfortable aspect. I had some headshots done because you weren't in the area at that time. So I had to find someone else. I did find another wonderful woman in the area. She made me feel so comfortable. I showed up at the session completely nervous. It was on location. I told her, okay, make me look beautiful and make me look engaging, because I come across sometimes too professional, being an academic and very research minded. Sometimes on paper and in pictures, I don't look approachable. And then when people meet me, they're like, you're not anything like your pictures. So I said, you have to make me look approachable. You have to make me look like me. And she did a fantastic job. But she, being the professional, she told me where to stand. She told me the poses. She put me in the best lighting. She picked a wonderful location I would have never thought of. And the pictures ended up turning out fantastic. going to be vulnerable here, but I cried when I received them.
Yeah,
Because it was the
that's a good
first time-
sign. That's actually our favorite emotion, is when people gasp and cry.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time I saw myself the way I envisioned myself in my mind.
Right.
Because for years I was told, oh, you're so pretty in person, but you take horrible pictures. You're not photogenic. And, you know, that sticks in your head.
It does.
It's like, oh, great. I never want to take another picture again. But anyway, so it was the first time that I got to see what I thought of myself in a picture, you know, the authentic me. So I just wanted to throw that up there about the benefits of hiring a professional. They know that, you know, how to make you shine, how to get the real authentic you to show up in that picture. Because again, pictures are worth 1,000 words.
They
You don't
are.
have to say a thing. And with that picture, you know, you can convey your story, you know, that brand. I call this podcast The Story Within because we're trying to get it out. And I wanted to start with photography because pictures tell 1,000 words. That's your story in a picture.
It
Anyway.
actually.
You know me, Laura, I can go off on my tangents. So let me move on. So the next thing
I just like how I didn't have to answer the question because you had the experience.
well, that's because you educated me. I'm learning all of this from you. You're the expert. So thankfully we've been friends for a long time. So I'm schooled up, I guess, as they say. So so usually when I talk to clients after we do the resume work and the LinkedIn, and I say, you know, you really need that headshot, and then they panic.
Yes.
Well, where's the best place to get headshots? Where do I find someone who can do it? What color should I wear? Should I wear my glasses? And that was a big one for me. And I see you wear glasses too. You know, do I wear them? Do I not wear them? You know, so what do you tell people in that regard?
So for me personally, because I'm tired of answering this question 100 times, I wrote an article.
Oh, awesome.
And I have a beautiful template. After you book with me, you get directions to my studio, how excited I am, and a link to the article that tells you how to prepare. Because this is a very common question, what should I wear? But I go into a lot more than what should I wear. I go into, you know, how you should prepare the night before, hydrate for men, for example, how not to nick yourself in the morning when you're shaving and then expect your pictures to look great, you know, a couple of hours later. because professional lighting brings out every single detail you can imagine. Okay, so if you walk in with, and this is one of the things I tell my people is bring your clothes on a hanger and make sure that they're actually ironed, because my camera and my lighting will pick up everything. And for me to spend another extra hour or two in Photoshop trying to make your clothes look like, you know, you went to the dry cleaners, it's something I'm going to do because I care about my brand, right? Because it reflects you. It reflects the fact that I didn't fix your clothes,
right?
Or edit your clothes, even though you just didn't pay your dry cleaning bill.
Right.
So in terms of what colors to wear, it really depends on your skin tone. But for general recommendations is jewel tones. You know, black and white. I love black and white, but it is kind of boring. You know, and so those mid tones, you know, royal blues and forest greens really do really well on any complexion. And glasses. I encourage anyone who wears glasses to always wear their glasses. And this is one of the benefits of having a professional photographer. You can see the glare right now just in the lighting of the camera. If your photographer is good, they know how to position you so that there's no glare. Or they know how to retouch your pictures after the fact to take out the glare. And if they don't know, they're willing to spend a portion of their profits from, you know, your session to a professional retoucher to take that out. And the reason why I stress do not give in is because, you know, if that is your identity, you wear glasses all the time, I may not recognize you without your glasses. You may not see me without your glasses, right? So don't let someone tell you take them off just because they're uncomfortable taking your picture and they don't know how to position you correctly or they don't know how to retouch. It's part of your identity. And maybe that's what you ask when you're researching your photographer is, I wear glasses. Is that going to be an issue? And the answer should be no, it's not an issue. Because it's hard. It's, because if you don't look, I mean, if you came up to me without my glasses on, you probably would recognize me, but most people identify or describe people with, the tall woman with glasses.
Right. Yeah, I've worn glasses for years. I had a period in my, younger days, 20s, 30s, where contacts, were worn all the time. And I dreaded wearing my glasses. But now that I've gotten older and do more reading and whatever, it's convenient, and it's just me. It's part of me.
Yes, I swallowed my ego many, many years ago.
Yeah.
I love my glasses. They're, this my long distance, my computer, and my reading, because I was tired of taking them on and off and losing them.
I haven't. So I have the bifocal for the reading, but I don't have the computer one. I'm looking at that next. So I'm glad you said that. And I'm looking at, okay, if I have to wear glasses, maybe I go a little bolder, because mine are the, clear and no design on the front. Maybe this is the year to go bold. I don't know. And that will require new pictures. So I'll have to get with you.
That's right. I see you have a question.
Huh?
I see there's a question in the chat box.
Oh, you're good. I can't even, I'm learning this technology. Okay, question. How do you feel about subtle filters for DIYers?
So I'm assuming they mean filters that you can put over the picture, like black and white is a filter. I think it's appropriate. There's times it's appropriate to have black and white versus color. What I'm not a fan of, and I wouldn't do this for like a LinkedIn photo, for example, is, on Instagram, there's probably 2,500 different looks and feels that you can put on your camera to make them look vintage or to make them look retro or whatever the new word is. Not something I would encourage someone to do for a professional photo that they're trying to convey corporate, because it's a distraction, right? The whole purpose is on you, not to focus on the picture. So.
Well, and maybe and let me jump into this next question then. Beyond headshots, what are other types of professional pictures people should consider? Because here's the thing, as a business owner and also author, I like to show different sides of myself. So I'm beyond, LinkedIn for my headshot. I also have, a website and marketing materials and stuff like that. So what other kind of professional pictures? And maybe the filters could, something different could work for that. Would that be something?
So if you're going to use filters, I would probably leave that to your, if you're designing your own website and you want to put some type of filters over to match the look and feel of the website, I think that's appropriate. Again, my personal opinion, if you want to add extra ears to your face and color your hair, go for it. Maybe that's your brand.
Right. Yeah.
If that's your brand, and maybe you're selling some software, that makes sense. Just stop and think, what message am I sending with this picture? How does this filter enhance or improve it? Is it just to attract attention? Is it the right kind of attention? There needs to be a why with your picture, right? So the previous question, I'm sorry, could you remind me what we were just?
That's a good question. I skipped around, so I don't recall what we were talking about. Oh, we were talking about filters, and for professional, other types of professional pictures is what it was.
So I was going to mention business branding and personal branding. Those are two terms that you'll start to hear if you haven't already, and especially during 2020 when everybody was kind of going more virtual. Personal branding and business branding, somewhat synonymous in that, when you're trying to show your personal brand, obviously one headshot's not going to do it. And you did a great series of pictures where you could use them on your website, you could use them on your podcast, you can use them on your book. And so when you're looking for a photographer, look at their portfolio and see if they can do another term that's synonymous with that's very similar is environmental portraits. It's taking a picture of you in your setting, all right? So if you're a baker, for example, me putting you in front of my black, white, gray, yellow, red backdrop and getting a nice short cropped picture does not convey baking.
Right.
Me coming to your kitchen while you have flour, sprayed everywhere, and you're rolling out, and I'm taking pictures of you. And maybe for me personally, I have a unique style. I'm very minimalist with my pictures, and so I'm trying to evoke a little bit of emotion and convey stories. And so you'll see a lot in my photography. I hone in on a lot of details. So you'll see, if I'm taking a picture of a baker, I may be only taking pictures of their knuckles on the rolling pin.
Okay.
Right, because that conveys a certain story. Right, you know exactly what it is. You can see the flour, you can see the dough, you can see a little bit of the knuckles, and then maybe I'll pull out and it's just the forearms, and then maybe I'll pull out and then I've got a picture of the actual baker. But all three of those pictures can be used to tell a story, to tell the brand, and they're professional quality pictures if they're done right with lighting. I bring in lighting to the kitchen. And that is business branding, right? That is helping them establish trust, to tell a story about who they are. It drives their bottom line. It shows that they've invested in quality imagery, and people are more likely to buy from that baker than opposed to the baker that took their cell phone and took a picture of their bread.
Right, right. And again, another benefit of hiring a professional,
Right.
because the professional is going to look for those things to zoom in on,
Right.
and that's going to help tell that story for that professional.
Well, and anyone who does that type of photography would start off with a consultation session where they'll sit down and they're going to ask you to fill out. For me, I'll ask you to fill out a questionnaire, and I want to know about your business. Who are you, what's your why? Who's your audience? What's your ideal client? What do you sell? What are your competitors selling? Are there any shots or anything that you've seen online that you'd like to, emulate, those kind of things. And that, because what you're doing is you're helping them design their brand. Some business owners know what their brand is, and they'll tell you. And some have no clue and leave it up to the photographer. So it's just a matter of, you get what you pay for.
True. That is very true. Very true. All right. So let's see. What about this one?
Do you see you have a question?
Oh, another. You are so good at this. We just need to tag
Well, last
team.
time I did this, I didn't pay attention to the comments, and there was a lot going on.
It doesn't. Well, I won't go into the details of the technology. It's user error, so I need to figure this out. So let's see. We got how important is color and photos for business branding? I think Janine's photos with her signature.
Yeah. Well, it just depends on is that your brand? And it's one of the things I ask in my questionnaire. Do you have certain branding colors, right? Are you trying to convey a certain look and feel? So you may not necessarily put those colors in the picture, but if you're trying to come up with a certain theme. If I'm taking a picture of a business that does something, in a certain industry, that I probably want to make sure that industry is represented in that picture. And it may actually be tied to colors. It may actually be tied to location, just a certain feel. So colors are important. Colors can be distracting. So you have to, you just definitely have to make sure that you pay attention to what it is you're trying to convey. And I'm being very general because one size does not fit all. Right.
Right. And I think as the person, you have to feel comfortable too. I'll be honest. I've done one Bible study podcast now, and this is it from the business side. So I thought about you. I'm like, what would Laura tell me to wear for this podcast? Do I wear white? No, my background's white. Do I wear blue? So I went with what I had. I'll look on screen, see how it looks, and I'll figure it out from there. I'll probably call you later. I don't know. But I think you kind of, you figure out a little bit. I'm glad I have professionals such as you in my life that can tell me where I'm messing up.
A good point too is when it comes to wearing clothes, it's wear what you're comfortable. Because if you start to wear clothes that are uncomfortable and don't feel good on you, you will be able to see that in camera. It'll convey.
Okay.
you'll never get comfortable. And I've, sometimes people, their clothes aren't fitting well. I hear a lot about COVID weight.
Yes.
I have a
Yes.
COVID friend with me, and so I would ask you that when you go, make sure that your clothes do fit well, because there are certain things that we're going to do to produce, if you're doing a professional headshot with just a standard background, to produce symmetry. And by that is, if I'm wearing a jacket and you have a tie on, I want to have that tie straight down the middle. Well, if you can't button your jacket, it's going to be very difficult for me. I'm going to have to bring out clips. And sometimes it gets to be kind of awkward, right? Because people can't button certain things. Or conversely, maybe you've lost a lot of weight and you haven't updated your wardrobe. And now you're swimming. The camera is going to see that.
Yeah, gotcha.
And it ends up being a very distracting picture. And people start to look at your clothes and I'm not looking at you, which defeats the purpose of getting a good headshot at that point.
Gotcha. So because I told you that I was deathly afraid of having my picture taken, and the young woman who did help me with my former headshots and stuff was wonderful, but she was able to get me to relax. How do you help people like me relax during the session? You just said clothes, make sure beforehand you pick out clothes that are comfortable. What other things do you do as a photographer that help you relax, or help people relax, excuse me?
Yeah, so I have something going for me, and this is not me bragging. I tend to be very personable. In fact, to the point where my children say, "Mom, please stop. Stop talking to every person that you meet." And my mother did that to me as well. So it's the European side of us. But my sessions, and I can only speak for myself, my sessions last 90 minutes, and that seems like a long time, but it's an experience, and the experience that I'm trying to create is a collaboration, right? Because 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, no one walks into my studio excited about getting in front of that camera, even if they know me. And the majority of my clients either already know me or know 6 degrees to me, because many of my clients are in the veteran community or they're in the DoD community. And so that's what I start with. My studio is a very cozy, safe space. I have a couch, they come in, they sit down, and before we even get started, we're talking about nothing in particular. It's just setting that ease, and the lighting is cozy. I have these horrible fluorescent lights that I don't use. I have a beautiful Zen kind of feel in the studio, and I actually designed it on purpose for that, right? Because it's just not a fun experience. I've never had fun in front of when I went to get portraits, and I know how that feels. And so you come in, you sit down, and we just either reacquaint ourselves. I just did a headshot with someone who worked for me when I was in the military. And we just caught up, and we just laughed and we had fun. And then we kind of ease into, there's a point where I'm keeping an eye on the time, right? Because in Old Town Alexandria, time is money, specifically parking.
Right.
So you're still working, but it's all part of that transition to, okay, so this is what, and then I go in and explain what to expect. Because if you know what's coming, unlike the eye doctor that does that to your eyes, you're sitting there in anticipation,
right,
waiting for them to blow that air in your eye. But if you know it's coming, you can kind of relax, right? If they tell you. So I know that I'm going to be standing up in front of this camera, but what is it going to feel like? What is it going to look like? So I will tell them, I said, listen, the reason why it takes so long is because we're going to stand up. I'm going to show you how to pose like a rock star, right? And there's a lot of humor. I use a lot of humor, self-deprecating mostly, because if they're laughing at me, 1, I'm going to get a great smile, and 2, the focus is off of them, right? They're not thinking about themselves. But the technique that I use is I will go through a series of pictures with their first outfit on, and then we'll put them on a laptop. And then we'll look at them. We'll go back to that couch.
Okay.
And I do that for several reasons. And I explain to them with these words. So this is why I do this. It's because, one, I want to give you the confidence that I know what I'm doing. I know you know what I know what I'm doing, but when you see yourself in my pictures, then suddenly you're a little bit more relaxed. And usually that's the, wow, that looks great, right? Because
Right.
how many times do people get pictures with actual professional lighting, right? Or get dressed up, and maybe a wedding, maybe a graduation. And so there's that wow feeling. And then that, believe it or not, is a boost of confidence when they see, even if the picture's crap, it's just that first initial shock, right? You can't get that from turning, and I give them sneak previews at the back of the camera, but once it comes on the laptop and they see it, and then what I'll do is I'll crop it into how it would normally look when you put it on LinkedIn. We'll go through the whole series. And the other reason why I do it is because I want them to see anything that they don't like, right? So I pose them in several different ways. And if there's a side that, whatever side it is that they don't look good at, we're not going to do it again. For certain women, when their hair comes down in a certain way, perhaps it makes their face look larger or smaller, or certain men, maybe there's more chin than they wanted at a certain angle. Well, if we figure that out in that first series, then let's not repeat that, right? And the other reason I do it is because if there's something, maybe your necklace, is top heavy and it shifts every time you move. Well, I'm looking at so many things that maybe I missed the necklace, but when I see it in the picture, it's a collaboration, right? You might point it out, or I might point out, oh, that's an amazing picture, but oh, look at your necklace, it's shifted. I might be able to do that in post-processing, but let's do another round and I'll pay attention to the necklace. And sure enough, or collar that doesn't lie right, or whatever it is, right? And so it's a very detailed collaboration partnership. And we do like 3 or 4 rounds of that, which is why it takes
Awesome.
90 minutes to 2 hours. That sounds like, oh my God, so much time. But everybody leaves saying, I had so much fun.
Right. And that goes to what I was saying earlier about the fit. If you find the right person, and like you said, one, you're very approachable and very fun to be around anyway. But if you're looking for a photographer, you need to make sure you have a good fit. So if you go to that initial consultation and you're not feeling it, that, it's hard to communicate with that person. Maybe that person's not the right person for you. Doesn't mean they're not good, but it just means that they might not be the right photographer for you. It's the same that what I tell my potential clients for coaching. I might not be the coach for you, but I know lots of coaches, so I could potentially recommend one for you.
And conversely, you might not be the right client for me. I've actually fired a few clients before they walked through my door because there was just so many questions, and so much high maintenance. And I have a process to where, I give you an opportunity to make an appointment with me for the business branding and talk. Well, if you don't want to talk, but you want to send me 5,000 emails asking all those questions that we would have addressed in that initial consultation, then perhaps we're not. I've learned how to say, I don't think I'm the photographer for you. I'd be happy to.
Right. I've learned the same thing on the coaching side, or resume writing even. Yes. Right. Yes. Definitely a fit thing. Okay. So I have one last question. So where were some of the coolest pictures you've ever taken for people, or what were the coolest pictures?
I have a few iconic pictures that evoke a lot of emotion. But really, at the end of the day, for me, it's those pictures that people look at and say, wow, this is really good. Or like you said earlier, I had a mother who started crying because I took a picture of her senior with his instrument. And I have a very artistic kind of mind. And so there's certain things going back to that minimalism, and so I did all this research on how to take pictures with a cello. And I just wanted to have this very artistic look with the fingers or the face in the cello, and we achieved all of them. And I just remember turning the camera around and myself kind of getting goosebumps going, wow, that's an amazing picture. And I showed it to the mom and she just, I lost
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Lost it. I'm like, okay, that's a good picture. And that's, I mean, it's not that specific picture. It's just that being able to evoke that emotion. And if you can look at my pictures and feel some type of emotion, that to me is those are the coolest pictures. I recently did a series of pictures of my son, my middle son, in uniform for the first time because he's at a military prep school. And I had strangers tell me that after watching that video, they cried. And and I was like, wow. One, that's being very vulnerable to tell me as a stranger that you cried. But two, that means that those pictures that I did a decent job, obviously. So.
Yeah. I think I saw some of them on either Facebook or LinkedIn. You had both of your sons at one point taking
Yes,
pictures.
that was my last photo shoot. I got both in, which is always fun.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be cool to get awesome pictures of your own kids.
Yes.
And I'll have to hit.
That's one of the things that I have hanging in my studio. When you come in and sit down on that couch I mentioned right above you is a portrait of my three sons, and mainly because I'm trying to appeal to the audience. One of my things is ditching the digitals. Let's go back to the basics and start printing. I have pictures of my boys everywhere because studies show that children that grow up with photography on their walls gives them a sense of purpose. They understand that they're loved, and it boosts self-confidence. And I grew up in a house where no photographers, but there were plenty of pictures all over the wall of family.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when you walk into my studio, there's a giant canvas of my boys, which sometimes ends up being the starting point of a conversation, right? Trying to get somebody comfortable.
Right.
Do that tie.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, you were talking about the student with the cello. I'll have to hit you up because my son plays the string bass and he'll be a senior next year. So
oh, yes. I would actually drive down for that photo shoot.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Awesome. All right, Laura. Well, I think you've answered every question that I had with regards to photography today.
Awesome.
Is there anything else, any last thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners?
Just, I don't want people to feel pressured they have to go out and find a photographer. But if you do decide that you want to go the professional route, is take the time to do the research. Most photographers that are on the professional side have a portfolio on their website. Most of them will have their pricing. If they're getting cagey about their pricing, that might be a red flag, right? And some will tell you, well, I just don't want to list it on my website because I don't want my competitors to see it. It's only competition if you compete. There's enough work for everybody.
Yes.
Right? There should be no hidden fees or no secrets about so just make sure that you ask the questions. And when you're asking those questions, what you mentioned earlier is that's when you can find out if you're a good fit. If they're excited about working with you, about making you comfortable, then more than likely you're going to have a good session. But if it's all about, making the money and volume, if their session is 20 minutes long, I don't know about you.
Right.
I don't get comfortable in 20 minutes, especially in front of a camera. So.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Laura. For anybody who wants to check out Laura's portfolio, and if you're in Alexandria, Virginia, you can look her up. I have her information on the banner there. She does sometimes come to Hampton Roads, so I'll let you all know when she does, and you can get up with her then. But again, Laura, I want to say thank you so much. I know this was last minute as well, and I think for a first podcast, this has been great. You're an awesome guest, awesome friend, and I look forward to collaborating with you and just hanging out with you in the future. Awesome. So have a wonderful day, friend.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
Take care.
That's it, friends. End of podcast 1 for Story Within. And we'll send out the schedule for the next podcast. Thanks for coming. Have a wonderful day.